Davis steps under center. Gibson and McClendon behind him. Davis with motion by Richard. Will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh, he doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way. At the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory.
Left side of the line. Hood standing to Williams' right. Williams gonna throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Connor Barth for the possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barth. Good gosh, dirty!
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast, Big Heads Media Podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome into this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It is Anthony Pagnotta here with you, and for the first time in 4 weeks, it is time to recap a Tar Heel victory. The Tar Heels went down to Atlanta and pulled out the 38-22 win over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And, I don't know where to begin with this game, because I feel like this was a good win for the Tar Heels, much needed win, good, very good effort, especially after putting so much effort into a game against Clemson that you dropped. But there are still some things that I think you look at with this team defensively, mainly because of injuries, and offensively, and you still say, there is some area to improve with this football team.
That's really what you wanted to do yesterday was, A, get the win, which Carolina got rather easily, which is something we haven't been able to say in a long time.
Right.
But also it's one of those wins that when Mack Brown and the staff look at the film and grade the film, Carolina left a lot out there.
Yeah.
Missed some big plays in the pass game with just pure drops.
Mm-hmm.
And defensively, you still left some stuff to be desired. So I think it was good for us. You got the win which this team needed. Because we talked about in the preview, if you lose this game, whatever you gained in playing Clemson for 60 minutes, you lose.
Right.
And Carolina controlled the game pretty much the whole time. It was really never in question who was going to win. But there was also a lot that they did wrong. So Mack Brown can use this as a teaching point. You improved to 2-1 in the ACC. You get a road win in ACC play for the first time in 2 years, so that's important. But yeah, I think the game was we expected it to go. And we're going to look at this. We get a week off, and we should see a better team when we go to Virginia Tech.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you 100%. They definitely took care of business. Mack Brown addressed it after the game, saying, look, this was an important game. We needed to win this football game because, these are the types of games that if you drop, they're going to put you in a bad position. And, we were talking about it before the game. I kind of figured it out as the week went along, what we could determine the official term for this game as. Was this not what we would call a swing game, where it determines what direction your season is going to go in? It was, an important game, but it feels like, it was a swing game. So if you won it 3-3, 2-1 in the Coastal, heading into your bye week, you've got a chance. If you were in the Atlantic and you're 2-1, you probably don't stand a chance because you got Clemson. But in the Coastal, you definitely have an opportunity. If they would have lost this game at 2-4 and 1-2, you're feeling a little uneasy. It's there's still a road to get back there because look, Virginia Tech won and now they're 1-2 in the Coastal, and people say, look, if they can get their stuff together, they might be able to find a way to somehow come back and win the ACC Coastal and save Justin Fuente's job. But, I think you're right. A good win. There were still some things that were left to be desired, especially in the in the passing game from a wide receiver standpoint. There were some drops that, were a little head-scratching, and, that's one of the things that I feel like Lonnie Galloway's really got to address here over the next 2 weeks before they head out to play Virginia Tech, because we saw this become an issue last year as the year went along. These drop problems that started to show up and then really hit their hiatus against NC State, where, look, you had 7 or 8 passes that should have been caught. It was, again, somewhat similar, unfortunately, against Georgia Tech. And there were a lot of people saying at halftime, look, this should probably be a 24, 31-point game, because Carolina had some opportunities that they left out on the field. But ultimately, this team did a lot right. Look, the running game was on fire. 211 rushing yards for the Tar Heels on Saturday. Javonte Williams, another phenomenal performance. 20 carries, 144 yards, and a touchdown. Michael Carter, 20 carries, 68 yards, which is decent, but had a big day in the receiving game, catching 5 passes for 52 yards out of the backfield. So this Tar Heel backfield, we talked about it coming into the season that this might be the best overall unit on this team, and they're continuing to shine, this time with their best performance of the 2019 season.
Yeah, Javonte got back on track after a down performance, if you want to call that, after Clemson. Michael Carter did something that we asked in the preview, was let's just see you be consistent. Right. He did that. 68 yards on 20 carries isn't a lot. It's less. It's a little over 3 yards a carry. Mm-hmm. But he was also a factor in the pass game, making plays there as well. I think what we saw Saturday was really the first time we've seen this offense be what Mack Brown wants it to be, which is being able to throw whenever they want to. But when if they want to line up and run the ball, they were able to run the ball. They amassed over 550 yards of offense yesterday on the road, right, in an ACC game. We heard all year long we want to be the Oklahoma of the ACC. That's what Oklahoma can do, and that's what Carolina did yesterday very effectively.
587 yards of total offense yesterday for the Tar Heels, and a big reason why they got that high was because of Sam Howell. Just an unbelievable performance, career performance from him. 33 of 51, 376 yards, 4 touchdowns, just 1 interception. And that 1 interception came on the first drive of the game. After that, he was pretty much as good as you can be for the rest of the game. Now, you can say whatever you want about Georgia Tech and how, they've so many scheme changes. They got guys that, just don't fit either the offensive or defensive system. This was still a team that came in with the 5th-ranked passing defense in the country. They really did a pretty good job in the season opener, even slowing down Trevor Lawrence. Sam Howell picked this team apart, and honestly, you look and say, okay, 33 of 51, he didn't, he left some things out there. Not really. His wide receivers, if they don't drop the football, he might have had around 40 completions in the game for the Tar Heels on his 51 attempts. He was about as good as you could hope for, especially for a true freshman.
Yeah, we finally got to see him be loose in the offense, I guess is how we'll put it, have a lot more freedom to throw the ball more, and especially more down the field. We've seen him throw it at times this year, but it's always been short, intermediate stuff, and we've begged and begged to see the ball go vertical because he's been pretty much perfect on those kind of plays, and he was just that yesterday. I don't know if Phil Longo listens to the podcast or not. It feels like he did after the game plan he had yesterday.
He might, and we appreciate that, and thanks for taking our consideration when it comes to the play calling, because it was much better yesterday than we've seen the last couple of weeks.
And, I talked after the Georgia or the Clemson game, and it's hard to be critical of a game plan when you've been in all 5 games, but it felt like he hasn't been very optimistic or opportunistic at certain times trying to end the game. I felt like yesterday he had a good feel of, okay, now we need to do this, and you go and do it and you score. Whether it was throwing the ball or running the ball. The play calling is going to get better as he learns, the coaching staff, what Mack Brown wants in situations, and the quarterback. And we see Sam Howell grow. Really big day for this offense to find some rhythm. 38 points, the most we've scored, all year long. And hopefully they'll build on this performance moving forward.
Well, you talked about the deep passing, and I think one of the big things for this Tar Heel offense that has changed over the last couple of weeks is how well this offensive line has played. They have really elevated their play. Charlie Heck coming back into the lineup, playing with a broken hand. I think it's something that really inspired the rest of the guys on this offensive line to say, look, we've got our senior leader out here playing with a broken limb, and he's still out here putting up. I mean, he graded out in the Clemson game at I think it was like an 88.9 or something like that, which is ridiculous to begin with. But then you think about it, he's got an injured hand, and he's still doing as well as he did out there in pass protection. Was phenomenal in run blocking situations, and it was the same way again on Saturday. This offensive line really put in a real complete performance. They're really starting to finally show some familiarity with the blocking schemes. It seemed early on in the year some guys were out of position, and now they're starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm. They've built some of that camaraderie down there with the guys, because look, I mean, most of the guys now are able to stay in the lineup. Jordan Tucker looks like he's shaken off his early season injury. Brian Anderson's now been in there since the second game of the year against Miami. So I mean, look, now you're finally getting these guys that have been working together for now 3 or 4 games, and all of a sudden it's starting to look like a unit that you can trust a little bit more, that's keeping your quarterback upright. And the biggest thing that I thought Sam Howell was able to do, with the fact that he was able to keep himself upright, I don't know how much, because you were working during the game, but I don't know, when you watched him, it seemed like he was much more comfortable going through his progressions. It seemed like he was getting to his second and third guy, not sticking on that first guy like he has so much early in the year and so much throughout his high school career, which was one of the things that some people criticized him with. On Saturday, he seemed to really sort of try to get everybody involved. I mean, you saw guys like Garrett Walston get involved. Toe Groves had a big day, especially early on. So, being able to work through those progressions, I think that's something that we asked Sam Howell to do. We thought, okay, maybe later in the season we'd see it. This was a big step in the right direction to do it against Georgia Tech and give yourself a little bit of confidence as you get ready to go down a home stretch that has some winnable games on it.
We can complain about, not going through progressions. You got to have time.
Right.
It's not something that you can do if you're under duress in less than 3 seconds. Not saying that Sam has been under duress all year long, but there hasn't always been consistent time for him to go to a second, third, and fourth read. You talk about the offensive line, and what Charlie Heck's doing is phenomenal, but you got to talk about really Brian Anderson's now been playing meaningful games now for 4 games.
Yep.
Now he's more comfortable. He knows all the stuff he needs to know when he gets up to hike the ball, the protection checks he needs to make, the more familiar with Sam and the exchange, and that's important because we saw the offensive line struggle in the Miami game. My mind's blanking, and then once we went to Wake Forest, it had its moments.
Six sacks against Wake Forest, but again, that's the area where you can look and say, okay, some of those, the offensive line let the guys through, didn't give them enough time. Other times, Sam was just holding on to the ball a little bit too much. That's where that balance comes in. And that's why I think it worked so well against Georgia Tech, because the offensive line gave him time, and he was going through his progressions and not rushing things.
But yeah, easily the best performance from the line so far this year.
Right.
I'll go back and look at some film, and before I do the trench report, will be out on Tuesday. But at all 3 levels, you got encouragement from your quarterback play, your running back, and your offensive lines. Now got continuity with now the early season injuries have dwindled, and this team, actually, now you're going into the bye, you're a little bit healthier, and pretty good performance all around for the offense.
Yeah, we were begging Nick Polino to come back from injury. Now we might be sitting here saying, no, this team's starting to build a little bit of chemistry down there. Take your time coming back. But one of the other areas where this offense has really improved, and we saw it again on Saturday, is third down offense. The first 3 games of the season, this team was 9 for 42 on third downs, 21.4%. In the last 3 games, the Tar Heels have gone 25 of 52 on third downs, which results in a 48.1 I was wanted to say completion success rate. There we go. Success rate. And look, they went 11 of 19 on third downs. I think, again, we talked about it when we were talking about their struggles after the Wake Forest game. It starts with what you do on first and second down. I think the fact, especially the last two games, that the Tar Heels have been running the ball so well on early downs has been huge. But I also think, you're seeing, this passing offense start to settle in. Howell's starting to make some of those better decisions. And, I've liked the fact that, look, we saw, that in that little 3-game stretch of Miami, Wake Forest, and App State, to me, it looked like in the early downs, that was when Phil Longo seemed to want to take his deep shots. Now he's realizing, okay, let's put ourselves in decent position first. Let's come out with a first down throw that gains 5 or 6 yards. And then on 2nd and 4, okay, if you want to take a shot, then we can, because that still leaves us in 3rd and 4. So I feel like, the play calling has gotten a lot better. But, when you look at this third down offense in general, I mean, you've got the right quarterback to do it, right? I was sitting there watching at the WFNZ watch party with my guys from the WFNZ morning show, and I was hanging out with my guy Chris McClain, and we were just talking back and forth. And he said, the weirdest thing about Sam Howell is that this kid, he honestly looks better when the pressure is on. He is better on third downs. He's better in the fourth quarter. Like, it's just something about pressure situations. So, I think everything is sort of starting to work out. And this Tar Heel team on third down all of a sudden is becoming a problem for opposing defense.
The numbers were very bad. They were bottom in the country. I think they were probably dead last after 3 weeks. Now you flash forward and this improving. Well, that's familiarity with your quarterback and Phil Longo's figuring out the right situations to call plays. When to take a shot, when not, and being high and calling more high percentage plays on first down. And you're right about Sam Howell. We've raved about him through 5 weeks. The guy isn't scared of the moment. He enjoys it. He lives for it. He's made for it. And that's why you've seen him go toe-to-toe with the number 1 team in the country and not phase him. And you saw why 4th and 17 against Miami didn't phase him. And what he did against South Carolina and Charlotte, coming down double digits fourth quarter. He's not phased by anything. And that's pretty good for a true freshman quarterback who is going to take growing pains in his own right, but isn't scared to go win you ball games.
Well, he's been one of the talks of the town. Another talk of the town has been Jay Bateman's defense, which has changed a lot from last year. So, another good performance on Saturday. This is their 5th game out of 6 that they've allowed less than 25 points so far this season. You might say, it's a weird stat because they've allowed less than 25 points in 5 of 6. They have not allowed less than 20 in a game the whole season, though. So they keep them right in between the 20 to 25 points per game. It's working out pretty well. They're allowing just 24.3 points per game this year. And I want to do this. I'm going to compare some of the numbers from last year. So you look at points per game. Last year, 34.5 points per game allowed on defense. This year, 24.3. More than a 10-point improvement for this defense. So we talked about, look, even if you're going to let up yards, that bend but don't break mentality that works so well under Gene Chizik was something that we wanted to get back to. It's working out so far this year under Jay Bateman, who is having to work with some guys that maybe don't 100% fit the scheme that he is wanting to run. But we heard in the preseason he's a guy that's going to adjust to the type of players that he has. The passing defense, believe it or not, last year, 228.8 passing yards per game for opposing teams. This year, allowing just 211 points or passing yards per game. And here's the problem. Last year, the Tar Heels secondary was still relatively healthy. They had their moments where they had injuries, but their secondary was a lot healthier than it is this year. And still this year, you're seeing that improvement. The ground game, clearly the biggest area of improvement, 218.8 yards rushing per game. Last year on the ground for opposing offenses. This year just 160.8, another strong performance. on Saturday against Georgia Tech. You know, they had their moments early on in the game. Quarterback gave them a little bit of trouble as well. So the mobile quarterback, I think, is still a thing that, you know, we're going to see. We'll find out in a couple weeks because Hendon Hooker, he did some great things against Miami on the run. So we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, this Tar Heel run defense just so much different than in past years. It had been, I think, since 2013 that they had allowed less than 200 yards rushing. Currently, this team sits almost 40 yards per game below allowing 200 yards rushing per game. So they're doing a fantastic job. And total defense, 447.6 yards per game allowed last year. This year, down to 371.8. They're also doing a great job creating turnovers. 7 interceptions all last year, 6 interceptions in the first 6 games of this season. So look, you know, I think that if you're just looking on paper at the stats, you're going to look at the Miami game, almost 500 yards of offense let up. You're going to look at the App State game, 34 points let up to an App State team that is good offensively, not great. But Jay Bateman is really doing something spectacular with this defense, especially with all of the injuries that they've suffered to this point in the season.
Yeah, he's proven why Mac Brown had him to come run to fix the defense here in Carolina. There were questions when he made the hire just because what he did at Army was spectacular. But look at the way Army plays. They shorten the game. So when you're shorting the game as much as Army can with their triple option, your defense isn't on the field that much, what are you going to do?
Your stats are going to be inflated a little bit. Yes, that was a legit concern.
What he's proven so far this year is that he can handle it. He can handle being in the ACC, handling an offense that wants to go up and down the field and put points up at a premium rate. And the biggest thing is just the in-game adjustments. And we hadn't seen under Larry Fedora. We can see adjustments, whether it's on the TV screen or we're in the stadium. Okay, well, they're doing this differently. Whether it's like the stunning at Clemson was phenomenal. It confused the heck out of that offensive line, which is a seasoned offensive line.
We saw it against Miami just in game, and even South Carolina, where really in both first halves, it wasn't really an aggressive game plan. He had a couple of times where he would throw a blitz here and there, but in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, you could see that he was seeing, you know, okay, we need to start getting some pressure. Their offensive line is becoming comfortable with just seeing us rush 3, maybe 4 guys. Now we're going to add that 5th or 6th guy to, you know, the pass rush and see if they can adjust. And, you know, especially in the Miami game, because, you know, you got up 17. You didn't. Your thing as a defense is, okay, don't let them back in the game with big plays. You could tell that they were trying to prevent that from happening, so they were sitting back and being a little more conservative. Once they got to the fourth quarter, you could see that Jay Bateman made that adjustment, got a little more aggressive, and that was one of the reasons they were able to shut him down in the fourth quarter. Under Larry Fedora, with the defensive coordinators that he had, there probably wouldn't have been any in-game adjustments, and the team would have lost the game.
Yeah, it's just something that, you know, we've begged for, and now we're getting it. And he's doing this with, I'm not the one to make excuses for injuries, but this team is beat up in certain areas. But also,
the secondary is destroyed. We're not talking about that here.
None of these guys are guys that typically fit his kind of defense, and he's doing wonders with it. Leads you to believe whenever he gets the kind of guy he wants, what Mac Brown wants, this could be a defense that's going to cause problems in this conference moving forward.
It's not that they don't want the guys. It's the fact that the guys that they're bringing in will fit this system better. They played in a similar system to this. They do certain things that, like, let's say you've got a corner that typically, because, you know, Larry Fedora's defense coordinators really like to be zone-heavy guys. If Jay Bateman wants them to play more man defense because he wants to blitz, there are corners that are specialists when it comes to playing man defense. A la Jaden Chalmers, who's committed in the 2020 class. Thrives in man-to-man coverage. That's where he's the best. There are other guys that are a lot better in zone coverage because they're smart. They're guys that like to sit back and know their assignment going into the play. I can drop back into a zone. I know that I have to cover this range of field as opposed to covering one single guy. So that's what we're saying. We're not saying that, look, these guys are terrible players. Some of these guys don't fit the system. That's an actual thing. There are guys that fit different systems better than other ones. That's what I'm trying to explain to people, especially at the linebacker position. You got a lot of guys that are playing outside linebacker right now that maybe haven't played outside linebacker their entire career. They're guys that, like, one guy that I think has done a phenomenal job with it is Alan Cater, a guy that always had his hand in the dirt. At the high school level, he was a three-point stance defensive lineman at all times. Hand in the dirt, he was getting after the passer. Now he's a guy that's having to stand up, and I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is the best he's looked throughout his career. I think he's made all the adjustments that he's needed to, and he's one of those guys that maybe doesn't fit the system 100%, but has really worked his tail off to become a guy that can make it work in this type of system.
Yeah, and it's not a shot at the guys on the current roster when we say we don't. It's not that we don't want them. You don't fit the kind of scheme we want to run, and we're gonna get those kind of guys. And we're seeing guys all over. Alan Cater, who's making plays, Chaz Surratt making plays. The ability of these players to adjust to Jay Bateman as he adjusts to them has been pretty fun to watch as fans.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, it's fun knowing when we go into games we don't have to score 50 if we want to win, and that's how it felt for the longest time. Was if we don't put up 50, we're not winning. We're seeing adjustments made during the game. We're seeing technical changes with the defensive line, the secondary, the technique's a little bit better with all these guys. It's just for us, when we got into Carolina football, we were known for playing really good defense. And then we had almost a decade where we didn't stop anybody. It's kind of fun getting back knowing we can win a game if we got to play 24-17.
Well, I mean, that, okay, let's say that the offense is feeling it a little bit. You get into a 4th and 2 situation, on your own 45. In years past, you would say, okay, there's no way we can go for this because we can't trust our defense to make a stop. This year, you actually have confidence in your defense where you say, you know what? We can actually take a risk here on offense and try to do something and keep the ball moving because we trust that even if we don't get it, our defense can get the ball back for us. And you're right. I mean, and you talk about Jay Bateman adjusting to his guys that are on the field. You really don't see that with defensive coordinators. A lot of guys that we've seen are really, really stubborn and say, look, you've got to adjust to my system. You do what I tell you to do, or you don't play. Jay Bateman's a little bit different. He understands that, look, I'm coming into a situation where these guys have never played in a system like this. It was completely different, the type of system that they played in under John Papuchis, under Gene Chizik. It's totally different. So I'm going to, not only are they going to adjust to some of the things that I want to do, but I'm also going to adjust what I do to kind of play to their strengths as well and give us a chance to make plays. And that's what they've done so well. He's really done that in the secondary because he's made a lot out of nothing, even this weekend. And again, the secondary, 171 yards allowed to Georgia Tech. You could say, okay, well, Georgia Tech, they're still struggling. James Graham, had a better game than I expected. I'm going to be honest with you. He made a couple throws that I kind of sat there and said, wow, okay, Georgia Tech actually does have a guy that can throw the ball around a little bit. We haven't really seen that in recent years. But, I mean, they definitely had their struggles because this secondary is just so beat up. If there's a team that needs this, or a unit on this team that needs this bye week more than the secondary, I can't find it because this secondary is currently without Patrice Renee, Cameron Kelly, Miles Woolfolk, Bryson Richardson, Trey Morrison, and Trey Shaw. All of those guys, as of right now, are on the shelf. Now, we don't know the status of Trey Morrison. He left Saturday's game in the first quarter with what they called an upper extremity injury. So what it probably is that he's back in concussion protocol, unfortunately. We really hope not because, again, concussions are something that you never want to mess around with, and it's really, really hard to get out of concussion protocol once you get in. But this is the thing about this Tar Heel secondary. There are 5 spots in this Tar Heel secondary if you count the nickelback spot as well, which we see roughly about 50% of the game, maybe a little bit more depending on who you play. This team has 9 scholarship players that are healthy in the entire secondary. So not even enough to fill an actual 2 deep in the secondary right now. This unit really needs this bye week so they can try to get healthy for a stretch run that, is manageable if they can at least have a secondary that, can hold teams under 200 yards a game.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm not going to say frustrating, it's just...
Well, I mean, it is frustrating because you got guys that are playing really well. A guy like Miles Wolfolk, 3 interceptions, having a great year, and then gets injured. It's frustrating. That's a good adjective.
Yeah, okay, I'm frustrated because I can't see these dudes be healthy for 12 games, and some of it's unfortunate, some of it is whatever it is. The football guys hate you or whatever. But, at the end of the day, it's football. It's next man up. Mm-hmm. The good thing is, so far, our guys done a pretty good job stepping up when they've been called upon to make plays. Don Chapman had a phenomenal game yesterday. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of examples, and also in a weird way, you're building depth in the secondary because all these guys are playing. It's not because you're winning games back and forth when they get to plays because of injuries. But think about when all these guys come back and are healthy. Then you've got a 2, probably even a 3 deep in the secondary position because all these guys have played meaningful snaps in the scheme. You're not going to be scared to put someone out there except for Greg Ross. But, that's our guy.
Subtle shot at Greg. He had a tough game yesterday. He really did.
And that's we can look on the other end is, you're missing some leadership and you're probably playing some lesser talented guys, but you're still building depth, which is something this team is going to need in the years to come.
Yeah, well, thinking about what this secondary can be, with all these guys returning, Patrice Rene going to have another year of eligibility, Kyler McMichael, Bryce Watts joining the group next year. Also got to think that you're going to have Jaquarius Conley at safety as well as Cameron Roseman Sinclair as the true freshman that will join. Jaden Chalmers comes in at cornerback. Yeah, all of a sudden you're starting to look at this secondary for next year and you're like, wow, this could be a special group. It's just right now there's so much attrition there. Like you said, it's getting some reps for these guys, but you're almost just concerned that, okay, we're seeing at least one guy go down almost each week. We're going to run out of guys to throw out there. We're going to have to start throwing out some of these walk-on guys, which, the good thing is that the previous staff did such a great job of having their walk-ons ready to go. I mean, hell, we actually had T-shirts made up for walk-on you at one time. But, it's that's the only thing that I think is a little unnerving is that, look, this defense is improving, but in the secondary, we're getting shockingly low on bodies that can be out there to play. So, we'll see. This bye week could be huge for these guys to gain, get some momentum back, in the secondary with some guys hopefully returning from injury. That would be huge. Hopefully Trey Morrison, that's the big guy to keep an eye on there. Hopefully he is able to get out of concussion protocol and be back on the field for the Tar Heels next game, because Storm Duck, a true freshman, had a solid game, had some moments where he struggled, and Greg Ross, those two, look, they didn't come into the season as starters. It was supposed to be Patrice Rene and Trey Morrison, and both of those guys, they would be thrust into starting roles. I think, Storm Ducks showed some things, so is Greg Ross at times, but, those guys are definitely hit and miss, so it could be a little concerning as we go down the stretch of the season if Trey Morrison isn't able to get back up there. So, I wanted to ask you just about the overall effort of the team, too, because, this was something that I talked about with, if you look back to prior years, this team probably would not have given this type of effort, right? Last 2 years, there's no way. Following a game where you put everything that you had into it, came up short on what would have been the program's biggest win to date, you would not have seen that type of effort that we saw from Mack Brown's guys on Saturday.
Well, it starts with him, because if you listen to him in the media after Clemson, it was, hey, look, we played great, but hey, we're not here for moral victories. And also, if we go down to Georgia Tech and we're not as invested, we're not good enough to win. Mm-hmm. And I think that message resonates because they weren't invested for 60 minutes at Wake Forest. They weren't invested for 60 minutes at App State. And that was ultimately why they lost. They were the better team in both those games in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
But football is 60 minutes. If you're not – look, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, they can be invested for 15 to 30 minutes and win. Carolina isn't there right now. They might get there one day, but they're not there yet. And so I think that it helps that. And Mack Brown, I think he came out, was it Wednesday?
Yes.
Where he publicly kind of challenged this team. And I was listening to Adam Lucas talk about he's got the right feel of how to push the buttons. He knows when to be upbeat and positive about his team, but also he felt Wednesday, okay, we haven't had as good a week as practice we needed to have. I'm gonna challenge them publicly because they know in the media world they're gonna hear it. And the team responded. And it shows the kind of culture change that's happening in Chapel Hill, the respect that they had for Mack Brown because they're going to fight for him because he's restored the kind of pride in the program that was lost under Larry Fedora. Because you're right. If this team was coached by Larry Fedora, they'd have gone down there and probably got beat.
I think so. I really do. Or it would have been one of those games against a team that really had no business being in the football game, would have been in it until the last play, and it would have been a nail-biter.
And so that's just – I can't talk enough. I've said it after every game on here that I've attended, and these guys fight for 60 minutes, and that's something that is refreshing to see because they care about themselves and what they're doing, what they're about, and they're sitting there themselves at 3-3, which is more games than we've won in 2 years. So they're doing a lot of things right, and they've set themselves up to get healthy and compete to win an ACC Coastal Championship.
Well, I like what you said about, Mack Brown really knowing when to push the buttons. Adam Lucas brings up a great point there. And this is what I like about having a veteran or even a senior coach that's been there for a long time and done it because – and we compared him to Roy a lot earlier in the season, and I'm going to compare him here a little bit too. He will come out in the media and say, look, our team has struggled this week. Look, we've had a couple of guys that haven't given us the effort that we want to. And here's the thing about Mack Brown. Larry Fedora might have said in front of the media on Tuesday or Wednesday of a week, if these guys have had a tough week of practice, if they don't step up, we're not going to bring them with us. Mack Brown said in his press conference on Wednesday, if they don't step up, they will not travel to Atlanta. And look, you better believe that, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if any of the guys that didn't travel because of that. I don't think, I don't think, look, some of the people I think were saying, well, maybe that's the reason Carl Tucker didn't travel. No, Carl Tucker's a guy that's put in the effort for 4 years. He's been doing that for a while now. I don't think Carl Tucker's a guy that you have to worry about effort-wise. I think he didn't travel because he had a lower body injury. But I think that these guys knew, look, Mack Brown is serious. If we don't show the effort in practice, we're not going. He don't care. He will bring walk-ons with him that are actually showing that they want to work in practice.
It's also a lot easier when a coach says that and believes that when he's got a national title under his belt. He's got the success that Mack Brown has.
Right.
The comparison to Roy Williams, I think, will never die just because they are just so similar. It's not even funny. Because you'll see it with Roy where he'll call a player out. But the thing that always makes it okay is that whenever Mack Brown challenges a team or Roy Williams challenges a team, he always comes back and says, ultimately, it's my job to get them out of them what I want from them.
Right.
And that's the thing. They're not just blaming the player.
They challenge the player, but also challenge themselves at the same time to get out of the player.
For a player, it's a lot more easier to respect somebody if they're going to call you out, if they're willing to call themselves out and say, I've got to be better. Mm-hmm. And Mack Brown isn't afraid to say that. He hasn't been afraid to say it since he came back here. And so that's the difference, is there's leadership from the top that is now going all the way down through to the players.
The first 2 weeks of the season, we heard after both games that the coaching staff, we need to be better.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's different when you have a coach that comes out and says, look, the players did their jobs. We have to do our jobs now as coaches. You don't ever hear that. Usually when teams win games, they say, you know what?
they're not going to say, okay, we had a bad game coaching. Like the game against South Carolina, I mean, Mack Brown literally came out and said we tried to blow it for him. We did a horrible job coaching. These players were the only reason that we won this game. And it's so much different because with Larry Fedora's staff, really just Larry, it seemed like, because you didn't hear from the rest of the staff all that often. It just didn't seem like they had that type of accountability that this group of coaches do, especially Mack Brown.
Yeah, and that, it's why I reiterated it, or I said it and I'll reiterate it for the end of time. It's why when they made the hire for Mack Brown, it was the right hire for UNC at the time. He was what the program needed because the guy just gets it.
Right.
And that's what Carolina football needed in 2018 going into 2019. A guy that gets it. And is also going to win games and sell tickets and do all the other stuff he needs to do as a football coach.
So now they hit the bye week, sandwiched right in the middle of the season. For this team, it seems like it's in a really good spot because of just how many injuries they have. I like the fact that it's before a Virginia Tech team that looks different with Hendon Hooker at quarterback than it looks with Ryan Willis at quarterback. They play Rhode Island, so you don't know how much you're going to get. You're really going to know, but you got a little more time to get a little bit of film study in on a newer quarterback. And the other thing I like is, look, this is a place that has been, we thought that Georgia Tech was a house of horrors. This has been even worse. Going to Lane Stadium has never been kind to the Tar Heels. Now, this is not even your brother's Lane Stadium. I mean, it has dropped off very quickly to become a stadium that now, I mean, barely half full. This is a tough test, but where this bye falls on the schedule, do you like where it falls? Or you were saying a little bit earlier, it might end up hurting the Tar Heels just a little bit because they gained some momentum against Georgia Tech, but now have to go on a bye.
I hate it for the offense because you had a game where you would hope to build off of. Now you got to wait 2 weeks.
Which I get that.
Health-wise, they're already beat up as much as any team in the ACC, so it helps. Also got to remember there are 2 byes this year with the way the calendar fell. The season started earlier than Carolina gets. They kind of actually have 3 byes with a short week and then a 10-day layoff from the Pittsburgh to Mercer game or whoever they play after their Thursday night game.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting how they manage that. But, it comes at always a good time. The schedule is what it is. You can't complain about it. You can't fix it.
Right.
You get 2 weeks to get prepared for a Virginia Tech team that isn't as good as we thought coming in. Carolina's only won there twice since Mack Brown, I think, left the first time. So that'll be a point of emphasis as they try to get a road win there, get to 3-1 in the Coastal play. It is what it is. We'll see how they handle it and see how they look when they go to Virginia Tech.
Well, you said it. They're going to be trying to get to 3-1. The fact that they won this game, I mean, a Coastal run is not out of the picture here, right? Like, I don't think many people outside of the delusional fans before the season saying this team was going to win 9 games because, Mack Brown was that good. There's so much talent on this roster. Most people thought, okay, they make a bowl game, they're doing something right. But with just how, frankly, awful the rest of the Coastal is besides Virginia, I mean, there's still a chance that if certain things go right, if your true freshman quarterback keeps playing at the level that he's playing, they could make a run at the Coastal or at least make things really interesting these final 2 months of the season, right?
Yeah, which isn't overly shocking. I think it's kind of where Mack Brown, if he was looking at the schedule before the season, kind of envisioned this team being at was, well, let's get to 500 and see what happens. You're in a division that is chaotic as any division in the country, with some stuff that's happening. Duke losing last night at home to Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh being Pittsburgh, who decides to upset Central Florida, and then proceeds to come back the next week, nearly lose to Delaware, then turn around and beat Duke at Duke.
Yeah,
very strange. Virginia Tech's not the same. Miami, I don't even know what to think at this point. Like, we thought they had Jaron Williams, and that solved all their problems. He comes out yesterday. goes straight video game where he has 3 incompletions in the game, but unfortunately for him, the 3 incompletions were all interceptions. They lose that game despite coming all the way back. Who else am I leaving out in the Coastal? I feel like there's somebody else that we're just not talking about here. Oh, Georgia Tech, terrible. Plain and simple. That is definitely the worst team in that division. Like, that's the one team that we're saying, like we said in the preseason, there's no chance that they're going to factor into the race. And then, like, the team that everybody looks at and says, look, they're a really good football team, is Virginia. And, okay, look, even in the loss against Notre Dame, I thought they had some moments where they looked pretty good. Bryce Perkins is still the real deal. But, I mean, is it okay to still not trust Virginia?
It's Virginia.
Like, that's the thing, man. It's so hard to trust them.
It's, look, Carolina did what they had to do. You've put yourself in a position to play meaningful football games going into November.
Right. You're 2-1 you're 2-1 in the ACC, which is about where we thought you could be because you beat Miami, you beat Georgia Tech, and your loss in conference is to Clemson. Nobody thought you were going to beat Clemson, so you're fine right
now. They just got to take it for what it is and understand that all these games moving forward are important, and you haven't won a lot of these kind of games the last couple of years, so you're going to learn how to now under Mack Brown and the coaching staff. But, I mean, look, this team's on track to make a bowl game, which is kind of what we wanted when the season started. I had this team making a bowl game at 7-5, so they're kind of progressing towards my prediction of that. And the program is still in an upwards trajectory as the season's gotten along. They did they improved everywhere off the field from January to October. Now we're seeing the program grow on the field, which is where it's most important.
I thought Saturday was a huge game for the direction of the program because we talked about how if it was Larry Fedora, that's probably a game they go in there and lose. Mack Brown is getting good effort from these guys every single game. That was the best back-to-back effort that I think we've seen from start to finish. I thought the effort was pretty good from most of the guys. It was just the drops were what prevented that from being a runaway early in the game. And so I think, look, I said it in my recap article, this is not a game that you're ever going to look back on and say, remember that Georgia Tech game in the 2019 season? That was where the program was really showing signs of turning around. This is a big step in the right direction for this team. Now sitting at 3-3, 2-1 at the midway point of the season. And so we are going to have an edition of the podcast coming up where we will give you our mid-season awards. So we'll do offensive MVP, defensive MVP, overperformer of the year, underperformer of the year. We'll have a couple of different ones where that we'll give out. We'll do that as an addition of the podcast because, we don't have a preview for this week because it's a bye week. We won't have a recap next week because it is a bye week. But we are going to have a bunch of interviews as well. Jacob Turner of Tar Heel Illustrated is going to stop by. I'm going to see if we can't get our national guy, Bill Bender from the Sporting News, to come on and talk about what the national perspective of Carolina is at this point in the season. So we're going to have some great content for you guys. We'll definitely keep it rolling through the bye week. And then, of course, we will be back on the Friday before the Virginia Tech game. So October 18th will be the next preview edition of the podcast, and we will preview the game against the Virginia Tech Hokies for you. That should be a really good game, a team in Virginia Tech that, like Josh said, look, isn't the same team that we thought they were a year ago, or early, but before the season started, but looks a lot different now. They definitely looked different yesterday on the field against Miami. They still got some things that they got to correct defensively, and we'll talk about how the Tar Heels match up against that defense that week before for you guys. We'll have you prepared for everything as the team gets ready to head to Lane Stadium. A couple other headlines that I wanted to talk about just before we got out of here. Cameron Kelly officially declared out for the season before the game against Georgia Tech came out, about an hour before the game yesterday. He will be out for the season with an ACL tear in his right knee, suffered on the play where he leveled the hit on Trevor Lawrence. So, you're talking about bad luck when it comes to this team. Makes a play, gets injured, now out for the season. So the Tar Heels
without Miles Woolfolk. Still seems like he's going to be out for a little while longer. Don't know how long that is, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's much of a sign that he's going to be able to get back into play here anytime soon. So hopefully we get some better news here as we go throughout the bye week. Maybe he's able to come back against Virginia Tech or Duke. Hopefully he's able to get back on the field soon. But Cameron Kelly also out for the season, so that means that the Tar Heels will likely be rolling with Don Chapman for a while here. And look, he had an interception in the game against Georgia Tech. Also had a couple of moments where he was out of position in coverage. But it's going to be kind of hit and miss. True freshman, guy that played a lot of corner at the high school level, so it'll be interesting to see how he steps up, how Jay Bateman can get him prepared. And that's another reason why this bye week is so big. That secondary has some younger guys in there. This gives them a chance to get acclimated with the scheme, get their legs back underneath them, not have to learn on the fly quite as much. So that'll be huge for these guys going forward. Also, at linebacker, Jonathan Smith enters the transfer portal. So the Tar Heels' depth at linebacker gets just a little bit thinner, but the good news for the Tar Heels is that they do have a great three-man rotation going there right now. Chad Surratt leading the team in tackles. Of course, you got Jeremiah Gemmels, who has had a really solid season, and then senior Dominique Ross, who has stepped up and played very well as well. And, of course, if they need to, they can go to the talented former four-star true freshman Eugene Asante. His redshirt status as of yesterday, he is off the table. He cannot qualify for a redshirt as he's already played in 4 games this season. So they can use him as much as they need to the rest of the season. So the Tar Heels still look like they're going to be okay even with Jonathan Smith heading out. Smith finishes his career with 71 career tackles. A guy that we heard a lot about back in the 2015 class, I believe. 2015, 2016. One of the two. Don't remember off the top of my head. But never really came to be what many thought he would be. He was a guy that, as a true freshman, we heard a lot about. People thought he was going to make a big impact, had an injury, and really from there never seemed to recover. Had a decent sophomore year where he had 40 tackles for the Tar Heels, but just was never really that force that we were hoping he could be in the middle of that defense. He'll move on. Don't know where he's going to go. I think ECU would be a really good fit for him. Don't know if they're in play for him, but it'll be a little bit closer to home with him being from Laurinburg out of Scotland County High School. Seems like he can make a big impact there, so we wish Jonathan the best of luck wherever he goes next. So that does it for this recap edition of the podcast. Like I mentioned, next preview edition of the podcast will be October 18th before the Virginia Tech game. But make sure you guys go to HeelToughBlog.com where you can check out all the articles that we got for you guys. We got some great content up there right now for you guys. The recap from the Georgia Tech game, as well as we have a major targets update for you guys when it comes to the recruiting trail. So, this was written before Keandre Lambert committed to Penn State and Jacoby Cowan committed to Ohio State, but in the article, it kind of, it says before they even committed that it looked like they would go elsewhere. But everything else is still extremely relevant. Some great nuggets in there for you guys to read about some of the guys that the Tar Heels are looking at in both the 2020 and 21 class. Some really good nuggets on 2020 four-star linebacker Trenton Simpson, who was in attendance for the Clemson game, as well as 2021 quarterback Drake May, who is committed to Alabama, is a UNC legacy, and of course Alabama did add a quarterback in the 2020 class, so there is a little bit of news there. Nothing major, but still something to keep an eye on, so make sure you guys go and check that out. Of course, we'll be doing some great features during the bye week. There'll be some great things for you guys to check out. We are going to have the scouting report for DJ Jones. That will be up. We went and saw him on Friday night. He had a fantastic performance. Of course, you guys saw the interview that we did after the game with him. Just fantastic being able to talk to him and Jefferson Boaz the last couple of weeks, and we're going to hope to do that again this week when we're on the road. We haven't quite figured out where we're going. We are not going to go out to Jacksonville, North Carolina. That's a 4-hour drive, and unfortunately, with the work schedule, it's not really going to work out to be able to get out there in time for the game. So unfortunately, that one has been marked off the schedule, and we will not be able to go see Jaquarius Conley play this year. If he was a little bit closer, or, who knows, if he does play a team closer to this area during the playoffs, we'll probably go and take a look at them. But as of right now, we are not going to be able to get out there during the regular season. So we'll let you know sometime later this week where we're going to go. I think this might be one of the times that we dip into the 2021 class and go to one of the big-time Targets games to get a look at them. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. You can check that out on Facebook. Just search Heel Tough Blog. Make sure you like and follow the page, as well as Twitter at Heel Tough Blog on Twitter, or you can check my account out at Future Tar Heel. I make sure I put everything up. Everything that you see on the Heel Tough Blog Twitter is usually on my Twitter as well. There's even some stuff on my Twitter that you won't see on the Heel Tough Blog Twitter, so make sure that you guys check that out. Also, follow Josh on Twitter at Joshua Marlowe 5. We got basketball now that is a part of the Heel Tough blog, so make sure you guys check that out. Caleb Love's commitment article is on there. Make sure that you guys go back and look at that. See, the breakdown of what we expect from another 5-star point guard, the third in a row that the Tar Heels have gotten. So, Tar Heels are really feeling it on the basketball recruiting trail. And also, we're going to have some other great stuff that we're going to start doing as we get closer to the season. The Roy's Boys podcast, there'll be a page up on the Heel Tough Blog website for that as well. So keep an eye out for all that stuff that'll be added there. And make sure that you subscribe to all of the articles. Scroll down to the bottom of the page when you get on the Heel Tough Blog website. Type in your email at the bottom and hit that subscribe button. We'll make sure to send every single article that we write directly to your inbox so that you don't miss anything. You don't have to worry about going on any of those social media sites and trying to track it down. It comes right into your inbox. All you got to do is open it up, download the app on your phone, and you can read it right there. No issues. So, want to thank Josh for joining me. Want to thank you guys for listening as always. And as always, remember, go Tar Heels!